So what is the big question here? Why do you care? Why do I care? Why does this matter? It's because I think it offers us a new way to think about advertising and a new way to think about marketing. What people want to do is they want to brand companies. But I think you should instead think about how do you create employee advocates and build from the outside. This is the old way of thinking. If you get a brief from a client, you get stuff like this. It says, we're looking for the best way to communicate the new vision, the new values of our business. Write something pithy and beautiful and put it out in an ad somewhere. I think that's old school, and I think that's going to largely go away. What I think the new way, or a potential new path, is to think of something like this. Is how do we start with those that know the brand best, which are those that create it internally, the employees, and you build them to become advocates of something. And then they take that idea that originates within the company, and then they begin to spread it out and build from there. So instead of starting with consumers and working your way back into employees, how could you start with employees and work your way out to consumers? Because then all of your employees become your first line of offense. Think about each one of you. You have probably 2,000 some odd friends combined in all your social networks. That's a pretty substantial number of people that you can directly influence. If you have a negative experience in your employer, you're going to tell all of those 2,000 people, whatever you do, don't work for them. If you have a positive experience, you're going to say the same thing, whatever you do, work for this person. Again, that's incredibly important, and the sum of that can really change the way we think about a brand. So culture is obviously critical. Purpose behind that culture is important. And the way that we think about it at Strawberryfrog and the way that I think about it is that if you think about a movement, how can you build sort of momentum for a brand, for an organization? That can be our lens to action. One way to define a movement is that it's a series of sort of organized activities working toward an objective, or just an organized community that's to try to attain some sort of end. That can describe basically any company out there, as long as it has that sort of North Star, the place it's striving for. Why does it matter? Because each one of us has this desire to belong to something, step above us. That's why we wear shirts with brand logos on them. That's why we buy Apple products instead of HTC products. It's why we belong to different sort of, civic organizations. We want to belong to something bigger. And a company and a brand can play an important role in that and take advantage of that and really build it out there. Now the question then is how do you build a movement? This is a great TED Talk by a guy named Derek Sievers, who is an absolute genius and great entrepreneur. I'll let him speak for himself, but this is a bit of a taste on how we can think about building a movement.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. that yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, TED. Thanks.
So I think that's a great sort of lens to think about in terms of action. You know, how can you sort of transform an organization into an actual movement and have employees not feel like they're clocking in, day out, but are part of a greater mission. And that mission can be, it doesn't have to be, all about social good. It can be making the best product or making the best ad, but it's about striving for something greater. And when that happens, when you enable people to do that, they feel that they can talk about it, and they will talk about it. And then that'll sort of go out through the traditional channels. This doesn't mean that sort of paid media is dead or isn't important, but what I think we're going to see a lot more of is stuff like what Domino's is doing, what Red Lobster is doing, which is taking sort of the actual interactions inside of a company and amplifying that, taking it out there and making sure more and more people see that, because it's going to, it really builds the brand in an authentic way that people want to engage with, want to interact with. Again, the Walmart effect, the Walmart greeter can now scale. It's not just about the single person who walks in there. That person can have a dramatic impact. We're seeing this personification of brands, which I think is important. An interesting sort of case study in this, or sort of byproduct, is that when you engage employees, engage people in the creative process, you know, what's sort of being termed co-creation now, whether that be to develop an identity, to develop a new marketing campaign, to develop a new product, or just to decide what time they're going to eat lunch every day, they value it more. So there's a great book by Dan O'Reilly called, it's like The Upside of Irrationality. Read it, it's really interesting. But one of the studies basically says that when you create something, even if that something isn't particularly good, you value it more than others would, because there's the process of creating it. So what you want to do is engage both your consumers and your employees in the process of creating whatever that thing is, because they'll value it more. Another byproduct is innovation. You know, if you have better internal communication inside of an organization, innovation is a natural byproduct of that. It comes from when ideas are transmitted freely throughout an organization. It's pretty important. And then you get, of course, you know, retention, recruitment, and all those other things you look for. Thanks very much. Great to be here.